So the value that a recruiter can bring is they can say, hey, like I can help you prepare for the interview. I can help you negotiate your offer and increase your chances of getting the job. How do you know if that's a good salary? If you've never worked before? Well, the really simple thing to do is ask a recruiter.
Welcome back to the Tokyo State of Mind. We are a podcast to make your lonely life in Japan better through bringing amazing guests and sharing their invaluable stories and experiences with you. On this episode, we will talk about how much money you really can make it here in Japan. And let's be fair, knowing numbers is important, and you can't compare the numbers to the numbers that are relevant back in your country. We all came for the different reasons, but eventually we need to start thinking strategically how to get the best of your experience here, and especially your experience with money. And to talk about it, we have on board Misha Yurchenko, an author of the book Making It Big in Japan, who also has an 4-year experience of being a recruiter in Japan, and is today here with us to share his valuable insights, both from the book and from his experience of working as a recruiter here. So, hi, Misha. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, Hamada. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Can you give us a fifth grader explanation about recruiter's job in Japan and how recruiter can be helpful in finding a job?
Yeah, totally. So thanks for the introduction. Just to add a little bit more in there. So I was a recruiter for 4 years, and I was based in Tokyo, working for a small recruitment agency, which had about 20 people at the time. So a pretty tight-knit team. And we were mostly helping tech companies like Amazon, Facebook, Google, Netflix, Spotify, a lot of big names that you know, as well as some startups. We were helping them find sales, marketing, and engineers in Tokyo. So many of those people were Japanese. Some of them were foreign. So there was a mix of people that we were helping. And when I first joined, I really had no idea what recruitment was, even though I got the job. So I sort of had a bunch of interviews, and it was one of the few jobs that I knew about that didn't require fluent Japanese, because our clients were mostly foreign, gaishi companies. And so the HR, usually spoke English. So I really had no idea what it was. And it took me really a year or two to get the hang of it and to really dive deep into this whole recruitment industry. So going back to your question, so what does a recruiter really do, and what is their role? So there's really two different types of recruiters. So there's a recruiter who works at a company internally, like at Amazon, or there's a recruiter who works at a recruitment agency, and they don't work for any one specific company, and they have many clients they're helping. So as an internal recruiter at Amazon, for example, you're just focused on helping Amazon hire people internally. I was working at an agency, and so we had lots of different clients that would change every month or every year. We'd have to find those clients ourselves, and really what we would do is we would first of all go to a company. Let's take Amazon as an example, because they were a big client, and then we would sit down with the HR manager, and we would sit down with the hiring manager, and we would ask them all these questions about the specific job they're hiring for. What is the salary range? What are the expectations? What's exciting about this job? And we get all this information, we'd gather it, and then we would go out into Tokyo on LinkedIn and BizReach and Wantedly and different job platforms, our own internal database, and we would start sharing the job description and this information we got and looking for the person that fits the role. And so that was the majority of my job. It was going out, meeting clients, and then going out and meeting job seekers who might be a fit for this specific job. I think over time, if you build a relationship with a client, you get to know so much about them. So right now, Kamado, for example, if you went out and applied for a job at Amazon on LinkedIn, like you have no idea about that job, right? You read the job description, you have sort of an overview, You
Yeah.
don't really know who the hiring manager is. You
Mhm.
don't know who the recruiter is. You don't know really very much about it other than just guessing.
Mhm.
So the value that a recruiter can bring is they can say, "Hey, like I know the hiring manager by name. I can tell you how to prepare for this interview. I
Mhm.
can help you prepare for the interview. I can help you negotiate your offer and increase your chances of getting the job." So that's what a really good recruiter will do. A bad recruiter will just like send you the job description and send your
Yeah.
resume and not really help you out. So there's of course varying qualities of recruiters out there.
So it looks like the recruiter is almost like a tour guide.
Well, he's not even yeah, he's a tour guide is a good way to say it, but he's also a really hands-on sort of advisor.
Yeah.
So the insight that you get, like, imagine working with a recruiter who's I don't know, like they're working for a lot of media companies in Japan, and you really want to get a job in like some online media company. And so they can just map out like, okay, here are all the companies you can apply for. Here are their salary ranges. Here are my tips to get a job there. And they actually help get your foot in the door. Whereas if you just send your resume through the application system, you may
Mhm.
never get a response. And so there's definitely a huge value on recruiters, but again, like not all of them are made alike, and so you have to really screen yourself and sort of talk to different recruiters if you're looking for a job and figure out who do you trust and who's full of crap and who knows what they're talking about.
I see. Yeah. And while doing the job hunting, I definitely have noticed that, and I
Mm,
was definitely also at some point confused. I was
okay.
confused with the role of recruiter because it's like I think what they do is they definitely communicate very friendly with you.
Hmm.
They are, and the way how they communicate is very casual. It's not that formal.
Hmm.
So they can tell you, oh, your resume, like you should add more things so it looks more, it's, it's better. You can sell yourself better and
Hmm.
stuff. But then you don't really, I, I found it hard to understand what is the psychology behind it. Like, is recruiter really interested in helping you or helping
Hmm.
just the company to get someone?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and the answer is both. So the recruiter is being paid by the company,
Hmm.
right? So their incentive is if they find you a job at Amazon or a tech company or some media company, they get a fee,
Hmm.
right? And so that's a percentage of your yearly salary. So obviously they have an incentive for you to succeed.
Yeah.
They want you to get the job, but then at the same time, if you are not a fit for that job, then they're sort of going to move on and go to the next person, right?
Mm,
Because they're looking for a very specific type of person for a very specific type of job, and they may not think you're a good fit, or they may not have a job at that time that's a good fit. So that's why I would say, and it's quite common in Japan to talk to multiple recruiters,
I see.
right?
So
So
it's
if,
okay
if
to
you
have multiple.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, you have to watch out. Like, if if two or three recruiters are working with the same company, you don't want to apply for the same job through all the recruiters because they'll
Yeah.
sort of get annoyed about that. But you should definitely, yeah, talk to different recruiters and sort of see what their job openings are, and you can also sort of get a feel, right? Like if you talk to someone and you're sort of like, okay, this person's not listening to me, or this person doesn't give me any really good advice, then
Mhm.
yeah, it's probably not a very good recruiter and just move on. And there's thousands of recruiters, tens of thousands of recruiters in Tokyo. Uh,
Wow.
so you can literally just like, go on LinkedIn and search for recruiter and whatever company that you're looking for, or like recruiter and like foreigner, or recruiter and um, whatever industry you're interested in. And you should have some recruiters that pop up, and you can just contact them individually and reach out to see if they have any specific jobs.
Yeah, that it's quite a big number also of them, as you have mentioned. So,
Yeah.
um, what do you think people are getting wrong about the recruiters when like the people are like fresh graduates are just starting looking for a job?
What do I think they're getting wrong about recruiters, or like what they don't understand about them?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they a lot of people might expect the recruiter to do a lot of the work and send the application and get them the interview and all those things. And some recruiters will definitely do a better job than others, but I think there's also a responsibility on yourself as the individual, as a job seeker, to number one, sort of ask the right questions,
Mhm.
and then number two, also be a little bit aggressive or proactive is a better word in your follow up. So if you're just like waiting for a recruiter to get back to you, that's probably not a good strategy. You should be calling them on a weekly basis, catching up with them, meeting them in person, and really building a relationship with them. It's like anything, right? It's if someone likes you, then they're probably going to do a better job in helping you find a job. They're going to work a little bit harder
Mhm.
in helping you find a job, because as a student, as a new graduate, or even if you've graduated with a master's, you probably don't have a lot of work experience.
Right.
So there's not much they can do to maybe sell your work experience. Uh, Maybe you've had other projects, but really what they're going to be selling is your personality and your potential and your interests. And so you need to get to know the recruiter in order for them to sell you properly.
I see. Yeah. Um, for sure. The more you show yourself out there, like the better, and the more questions you give them, the better ideas this person should have about what you want from them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I can send you a link to this article later, but I wrote an article a couple years ago about how to screen out bad recruiters. So,
There's an
there's a
article
bunch of
about that.
questions. Yeah, yeah. So, like, for example, one question you can just ask is, "What is your relationship with the hiring manager?"
Oh, I see.
And, if they're like, "Oh, I met them one time for like 20
I see.
minutes." It's like, "Okay, well, you probably don't know them very well."
So
Um,
you practically can be very direct to them, just ask them things like,
you
so
should be.
because I think like for me, when I was thinking about recruiters personally, I was more assuming that, um, especially because I had to do everything in Japanese. It's like, oh, I shouldn't, I don't know. I had this perception that I should be very, very formal and stuff. And because I had to think
Mm.
about it, I didn't really ask that many questions. And I didn't know about much about the system. But now, the more I go to the interviews, I see how actually it never hurts to ask anything, just literally anything
Yeah.
of the job.
Yeah, the fact that you're doing it in Japanese is interesting. I would say, yeah, there's obviously a lot of Japanese recruiters. There's a lot of foreign recruiters also, who use English as their main language, and they work with a lot of foreign companies. So I would recommend sort of getting a few different types of recruiters, and you'll probably have like three or four trusted recruiters who are helping you. Maybe one recruiter has a good relationship with Rakuten, and you really want to get a job at Rakuten. And then another recruiter has relationships with a bunch of startups in Tokyo. And those are very
Mhm.
different jobs, right? They're probably going to be different recruiters. So you want to, yeah, sort of build those different relationships.
I see. Interesting. Yeah. That's a cool strategy to implement. Just find the
Yeah,
recruiter your company favors and become the
yeah.
recruiter's favorite and
Become their friend. Like go have a drink with them. Go have lunch with them.
yeah.
That's so some of my good friends were past candidates and clients of mine back when I was a recruiter, and some of the people working within my business today, which I run a coaching platform now. A lot of people I knew from the past from recruitment actually are helping with this, and so I think obviously relationships are important anywhere, but especially in Japan, it's that's how people that's how things sort of get done, right? So
Yeah, that's very true. How do companies decide the salary for
hmm.
the person? Like, how can recruiter help you get a better salary options?
Yeah, I mean, I think with or without a recruiter, you could probably get a higher salary. Now, the way that companies decide the salary, I mean, there's a budget, so they have a salary range already, and that's usually pretty fixed.
Hmm.
So you're not gonna go in for a job and negotiate to double or triple your salary without having any work experience. So that's quite unlikely. But there is a salary range, and that could be higher than what they're offering you. The way that they're deciding the salary is number one, your work experience. Number two, how strong of a candidate are you?
Hmm.
Uh, Number three, yeah, just the salary band, and maybe number four, like how you compare to other people in the team, right?
Mm.
So there's all these factors, and I think a really interesting strategy that you can use around the time you're getting offers is information you can get from recruiters. So for example, let's say you're really interested in working at a media agency like there's a bunch of media agencies in Japan like G Plus Media or Mullen Lowe Profero, which is a ad agency, or Dentsu iProspect. And these companies all hire uh, Gaikokujin to work there, and they don't all speak great Japanese, so they're flexible. Now, let's say you got an offer at all these companies, and they give you a salary offer of like 4 million yen a year. How do you know if that's a good salary
Yeah.
if you've never worked before? Well, the really simple thing to do is ask a recruiter and say, hey, like, what are the salary ranges for this kind of job, right? And they have access to all the salary information, so they can say, oh, like at the top end, people are getting 5 million yen as a starting salary, which is probably high. That's probably unrealistic, but maybe there is. Maybe in that industry, it happens. And at the low end, it's like 3.5. And so you can get that salary information from a recruiter, and then you can go back to the company and you can say, hey, like I've done my research on salary ranges in the market, and I found that the range is between like 3.5 and 5 million yen. I believe that my skills in A, B, and C qualify me to get a higher salary. I would like a starting salary of 4.5 million yen, and that's how you negotiate. You negotiate with data and with a logical reason, right? And then you just ask. A recruiter can do that for you. Like if you're not an experienced negotiator, if you're not comfortable and you think you're going to screw it up, then it's good to get some help. Um, and you don't want to do this in person. You don't want to be negotiating an offer at a table with an HR person because
Okay,
you're
tell
gonna
me
mess it
more
up.
about it. Sounds like a familiar situation. So
What?
why
Yeah.
would you do that like one on one? What's
Well, it's just very easy to, unless you're like a pro negotiator and you've done this many times. It's
yeah.
very easy to get emotional, and even if it's not a super strong emotion, you just make a quick decision and say yes, like I'll take that, right? Um,
So
you know
familiar.
what I mean?
Yeah, and especially I've noticed that when I was doing that in Japanese, and I was like, okay, it's so easy just to say hi, and because like sometimes,
Yeah,
yeah, the language is, the language barrier and stuff, and then I'm like, I wish I could bring someone with me to talk because,
yeah,
also I think strategically they're usually doing this very late or something when you're tired, and when you're tired and not in your best shape, like there's no way for you to negotiate something,
yeah.
your
No,
advantage.
don't do it. Don't do it. Just defer the conversation. You don't have to make a decision in a meeting. Like if they're trying to get you to agree on a salary or agree on a number,
Yeah.
uh, you can just have a sort of blanket statement that you tell everyone, which is, "I have to consider it."
I see, I see. And then you
Right?
come home, take a
Yeah.
good
Take a
dinner.
shower. Yeah, like look at it the next day. right? Like,
Yeah, look,
and
go on the
yeah,
website, look at all of the expensive stuff you want to buy, and realize I need it. I
yeah,
need
it's like
salary
I
to
need a
pay.
higher salary than 2.5 million yen, right? Like, so yeah, and a recruiter can help you, right? Like they can do the negotiation for you because it's in their best interest to get you a higher salary because they'll
Mhm.
get a higher fee. So they're definitely on your side. But if you want to do this on your own, if you've gone directly to a company and you're not getting a recruiter's help, you can still negotiate, but just do this by email, right? Like write out the email,
Mm,
have a friend
okay.
check it, and
Don't do
then
it in person.
don't do it in person. Like wait a few hours before you send the email, and then that way it can be very structured and there's no gap in communication because you can
Mm,
just you know you see what you read, right? And
yeah,
that's how a lot of negotiation was done. Even when I was a recruiter, I wouldn't do too many phone call negotiations with companies. Um, Sometimes, but often I just did it by email.
I see. Wow, that's such a pro tip.
Yeah, it'll save you a lot of time and
And stress.
yeah, possibly give you a salary raise as well. So
And it's interesting now when you mention it, like, because I've definitely been there, and I was like, am I just like, I don't know, am I just like that emotionally weak or what? Like, why I cannot say something? I, but when I look at it, I realize that it's all about timing. So because
yeah,
your thoughts are changing so much in a day, and if they catch you like in the right, not in the wrong, like not in the best position, that's when
yeah,
you cannot really negotiate well. But when you
yeah,
go home
definitely,
and
definitely.
you put all your thoughts together, you're like, hey, this is the right thing that I actually want to do.
Yeah, and I think one reason is people feel very sort of maybe weak, or maybe they feel flattered. I mean, it could be a positive emotion, like, oh wow, I'm getting an offer, or we're negotiating a salary, but that doesn't mean you should take the job, and that doesn't mean it's a good offer.
Yeah.
Um, like if you speak some Japanese and you're smart and you're proactive, you can definitely get job offers. So maybe it's not super easy, but it's not super hard. There's a big demand for foreign talent in Japan, so you're definitely in the driver's seat. And some people don't feel like they're in the driver's seat, but really you should think of yourself as, hey, this is my career. I'm driving. I'm driving my career. Like I have to make the decisions. I'm going to negotiate my offer. If I get a lower offer, um, and I'm not happy with that, I don't have to accept it. I can take that offer and I can go to another company and leverage that and say, hey, I got an offer here. Can you give me a higher offer? So it's
Yeah.
all sort of in your power to do that.
Right. So at the end of the day, it's like what you're getting from this party.
Yeah, exactly.
I see. Cool. Thank you. So, and with regards to like the industries, what are the, like, to your experience, what were the industries where people get the highest salaries, or what are the possibilities for like the low, considered to be low, like salary industries, like, for people from this industry to get higher salaries as well?
Yeah, yeah. So it really depends on what position you're applying for, also. But generally speaking, Japanese companies offer lower salaries just compared to a foreign company, a Gaishi company. Uh, Certain industries like advertising
Hmm.
have lower salaries. Uh, Industries like finance and tech typically have higher salaries. There are a lot of jobs you can get as a foreigner in Japan that's not English teaching and that's not recruitment.
Hmm.
You can get a job in a media agency. You can get a job in travel. Maybe not so much right now, but when
Hmm.
things pick back up, uh, obviously inbound tourism from overseas. There's a lot of sales and marketing positions where you can create content and do marketing for overseas.
Hmm.
That doesn't require much Japanese knowledge or language skills. You can be an engineer. There's a huge demand, and it probably has the lowest requirement for language skills.
Yeah, because
Uh,
engineers don't speak.
exactly. And you can get paid quite a bit as an engineer, but I think there's more. Yeah, like like within tech, there's a lot of B2B companies like Salesforce or HubSpot. Um, they tend to pay more for salespeople. So like B2B sales jobs in Japan can be pretty lucrative. Um, to give you an example, just to be open about my salary when I was a recruiter. So when I started, I was making 4 million yen per year as my base salary, which is pretty generous. Like some recruitment agencies are at 3, some are at 4.5, so it was pretty good. And then on top of that, you would get a bonus depending on your performance, which some people don't like. You may not like that sort of sales job, but I really enjoyed it. And my first year, I almost doubled my salary.
Hmm.
So it was like 7.5 million yen. And then after 4 years, my ending salary my last year was around like 17 million yen.
Hmm. Wow.
And so you can definitely boost your salary in a short amount of time in a recruitment agency in a B2B sales job that has some sort of bonus system. You're probably not going to do that in a marketing job just because of the nature of the job. But I think definitely possible in sales, definitely possible in finance, and possible in real estate. There's a lot of real estate investment firms, real estate management firms in Tokyo specifically. So you can get a job there as like a researcher, for example. They hire a lot of researchers and a lot of analysts. So if you have if you're good with numbers and you're strategic and you think you can consult, then like this could be a good job for you. Um, but yeah, so this is just sort of a general overview. But another way to boost your earning potential, apart from just choosing a good industry and a certain type of job, is to actually not start your career in Japan. And this is not the best option for everyone. Like if you really want to stay in Japan, then that's fine. Um, but I have a friend. He runs a podcast now. His name is David McNeil,
Hmm.
and he runs a podcast called what is it called? Expat Empire. He just interviews a bunch of people who moved around the world and immigrated. And he actually went to school in Texas where I went, and then in Jochi, Sophia University. He couldn't find a job that he liked after
Hmm.
graduation, so he went back to the U.S. and his Japanese is like pretty good. Like it's business
Hmm.
fluent, so he could do business in Japanese. But he didn't want to work there uh, for the types of roles that he was getting. So he ended up becoming a product manager at some gaming company in San Francisco and did that for like 2 or 3 years. And then he came back to Japan, and it was so much easier for him to get a job because he had gained this work experience
Somewhere
as a
else.
product manager somewhere else, and he speaks Japanese, so he immediately became like a senior product manager at like ASICS, a big
Hmm.
sportswear company. So, and then from there he made his way up. So I think there's multiple ways that you can grow in Japan, and it's not always linear, right? Like it could
Right.
be,
Yeah.
it could be sort of a zigzag, and
It could be like
there's
a
there's
roller
lots of
coaster.
cases like that. Yeah.
I see. But that definitely makes a lot of sense. Like what you told about, I mean, about from your friend's story, I think that one thing that people really should be aware of is that if you're good at something, it doesn't mean like you should work for this position. Even if you like speak good Japanese and you have like a certain skill that you're good at, it doesn't mean that you're gonna be happy doing this job.
Yeah, totally. And that's a really good point because there are a lot of Japanese companies that would hire you, for example. So, like, you speak Russian and you
Yeah.
speak English and you speak Japanese. And so, I could see you easily getting a job in a company, like a trading company or something, that requires some communication in Russian and in English. Now the problem is that's a very specific role, and the question is, are you going to be able to grow in that
Yeah.
role, or are you just going to be like the token gaijin, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and just be sort of pigeonholed in this job, and maybe you raise your hand and say, hey, I really want to be a manager, or I really want to move to this department, but they're like, oh, sorry, Hamida, like, we really need you to take care of these clients in Russian, so you can't move positions, and it's like, now you're stuck, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be sort of careful and define as much as possible, right? Define like what you want in the next 3 years in your career. Like, do you want to make a lot of money? Do you want to gain a lot of skills? Do you want to know how to be a leader and a manager? Do you want to pay off your student loans? Do you want to build a network? Do you want to learn marketing skills? Like, decide on your goals and then use that as a screening tool for the positions you apply for. Because if you don't decide your career goals, then someone else is going to
Yeah.
decide them for you, right?
And that's a trap. I believe that's the biggest trap because um, when they don't know, I think one of the things that I noticed while going to the different job interviews is that all of them are asking like, "What is your dream? Like, what is
Mhm.
your end goal?" And if you cannot formulate it in a way that, if you not formulate it also in a authentic way, it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be like 100% true, but in that way that
Mhm.
they can find something that is matching to your final goal or your dream, you're going to
Mm.
confuse both them and yourself as well.
Yeah, that's a very good point. If you have to have some clarity on it, and it doesn't have to be something super specific, like um, related to a specific industry. It can just be really general. Like, I want to join a fast growing industry and you know get out of my comfort zone. It could just be something like that, and you're probably not going to join a big traditional Japanese company if that's your
Right.
goal.
That's very true. Yeah. So clarity plays a huge role in that. So, Misha, what you wish you knew about working in Japan before coming to Japan?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a lot of stuff that I wish I would have known, but I think one of the things is there's more jobs than just English teaching and recruitment. So I sort of went over that already. I mentioned some jobs. I mean, there's real estate, there's finance, there's um, ad agencies and media agencies. There are sort of junior level uh, and this is a market research is sort of a path into marketing potentially. Um, and so there's all these different options, and I think one of the one of the challenges is you don't really know what's out there.
Mhm.
Um, Partly because, well, you just don't find information online, or you don't know many people, or that information just it's just hard to come by, and so we sort of gravitate towards what we've heard of, like, oh, there's these two or three jobs, and I
Mm.
think there's
Or
really a
something
lot
that's not
more.
clear.
There's a lot more there,
Mhm.
and yeah, it takes a bit of time to find that, but if you are proactive and you're talking to recruiters, you're watching and reading content in English and Japanese, you can find these different job opportunities and really set yourself up for success. Um, yeah, and maybe the second thing is just thinking a little bit more long term. So if you get a full time job in Tokyo, I sort of I sort of generally recommend that as a good starting point. Like, get a full time job for a couple years. You have the stability of the salary and the company, and a good boss, hopefully, and then after that, you can start looking at different options, and maybe you can be a independent contractor.
Mhm.
Maybe you can start up your own business. Maybe you can self-sponsor your own visa, and these are actually all possibilities that can save you money on just everything, from taxes to expenses. It can give you more flexibility and freedom, and you can still get a visa in these different ways. So it could be interesting to explore for anyone that really wants to stay in Japan for a long time. Probably being a full-time employee for that 10, 15 years is not your best option in terms of maximizing your salary. So in the book that I recently published, a lot of the people I interviewed said the same thing. They're like, don't be a full-time employee if you're going to stay in Japan for a long time. And so all of them or many of them switched from full-time employee to freelancer or starting their own business, and sort of went that route. And so I think that's something I wish I would have known a little bit sooner when I got to Japan.
It's interesting now when you mentioned that so many people in your book they said this thing. I remember when I was also interviewing my friend who's a photographer. He's so in love with photography now, and he always knew he liked it, but he didn't know that he didn't have confidence that he can make it a full-time job. So he was going all the way to PhD, just like secure his visa here. And when I
Yeah.
asked him like what you wish you had done differently, he definitely said something like, I wish I did everything to I spent all my time on photography.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
all the people who end up like actually doing what they like still regret why I haven't started earlier.
Yeah, and there's an interesting point from a visa perspective. So there's no such thing as a self-sponsored visa in Japan. Like that's not a criteria. But basically, what happens is if let's say you're a photographer and you want to stay in Japan, you're not married to a Japanese person, you don't have $50,000 or 5 million yen to put down for a business. Like, how do you stay? Well, basically, what you can do is go get contracts with different companies as a photographer. So if you are doing photography for some companies, like for their office photo shoots or something, and you have a yearly contract for Juman 100,000 yen a month, and then you have another contract for Jugomon and another contract for 50,000 yen a month, then you can basically just take those signed contracts and apply for the same visa, like a humanities visa, um, and that is proof of your stability and income, and you'll get the same visa as if you have a permanent job, and so that's the process of getting sort of your own freedom and self sponsoring yourself through your own freelance work or your own business. Of course, you have to get to a certain point, and I think if your visa is expiring in 6 months and you're trying to do that, it's going to be hard. And so a better way is if you do have a full time job on the side, start building out your freelance photography business or whatever, and then get those contracts to where you're getting an extra sanjuman a month, and then you're confident that you can quit your full time job and then just go off and do the freelancing gig. Um, if visas are not a problem, then you don't really have to worry about that. But if the visa is an issue, then this is one way
Yeah,
to succeed.
that's true. So my last question would be for you, like as an author of the book Making It Big in Japan, what do you think are the like what would be your piece of advice for people who want to make it big here in Japan?
I've got the book right here, by the way, just as a little zoom in there. I carry it around with me everywhere. It's quite heavy though. It's 500
Wow,
pages.
that's very
So
helpful.
yeah, so there's a lot of patterns that I noticed in the book, and people would say, yeah, sort of say similar things in terms of their advice they're giving on work and life. And one of them I already mentioned, right? It's don't be a full time employee. But the other one that popped up a lot is don't try and be too Japanese,
Hmm.
right? And you probably heard that before, but
Yeah,
really, like if you're trying to be too Japanese, then you sort of like even if your Japanese is like really, really peta peta, like it doesn't matter because you're still sort of seen as foreigner, and so really the advantage you have as a gaijin, you have the communication ability in a different language, in English, for example. You have a different cultural perspective, and you don't have to play by the same rules, right? You don't have to play by the same rules. And so, uh, thinking about that in your career as you go, join whatever company or start whatever business, it is really an advantage for you in Japan. Um, when I started my first business in Japan, it was there was many similar businesses, but only in the Japanese language. All I did was made it in English, and so like very simple. When I joined the recruitment industry, the first 6 months I was doing everything in Japanese. I was negotiating all the contracts in Japanese, but then after a few months, I was like, man, like I'm good at this, but it's so much faster and I'm so much better in English. And so I just decided to switch to English, and then my career kind of took off. And I still use Japanese sometimes, like when I'm going to izakaya with some clients, or just the cultural
That's where
knowledge
it,
of
where
like,
it really helps, right?
yeah, you can still use your language skills, but you don't try and outdo Japanese people in their own game. Like you will
Yeah.
lose,
Yes,
right?
that's true. I remember I heard the same piece of advice when I went to this company and I was doing the video editing for them. And there was this girl who came to me and she's like, I feel like what they're trying to do with you, they're trying to make the fish fly. So if you're a fish, swim, don't fly. And I'm like, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, like there's sort of, you're gonna be uncomfortable and you're gonna have a learning curve, and there's all these things that you're gonna need to do in a new job and new
Right.
industry. But there's different types of difficulty. Like if you're just like stressed every day and you're not
Mhm.
making any progress and you're unhealthy because of it, like that's not the right kind of stress. But
Yeah.
if you just feel like your brain expanding and it sort of hurts because you're learning so much, like that's obviously the sort of stress you want. But
Mhm.
it shouldn't be like super difficult. Like
Yeah.
there should be something natural about what you're doing. And if it's not, if it doesn't feel right, then you should probably trust your gut.
Right. Also, I feel that one thing that, playing by Japanese rules can do to you is it can just kill your confidence because you're there doing something that you're not tailored for.
Yeah.
So, um, there definitely should be a percentage of something that you're doing naturally
Yeah.
without putting too much mental effort.
Definitely. Definitely. I mean, there's I don't know if I can find it right now, but there's a funny story. Someone I interviewed who works at Mitsui, it's the traditional Japanese company, and he was saying something I didn't know, but he was saying that the hierarchy there is very very clear, and it even is clear when people are stamping using their hanko to stamp different documents. And so what happens is you have like the top like like shacho guy, and then you have all the buchos and kachos and just like the lower level employees, and you look at all their stamps. They all have to stamp the same document to get all the way up to the top, and then you look at the stamps, and then all of them are slightly tilted to the left as
Mm.
if they're bowing to the next stamp.
Oh, wow.
And so my friend who I interviewed, he stamped it like regularly, and then just like just square like this, and then his colleague came back with a paper and said, hey, like you need to restamp this because your stamp is not bowing to the next senpai in
Hmm.
line. And so like that was kind of hilarious, that there's this crazy hierarchy, even in the stamp culture. And I hope that's going away. But yeah, there's all these things that's like, okay, it's kind of kind of interesting to know that. And do you really want to be in that culture though? Like, do you really want to be in that environment? And maybe you do. Like maybe that's something you're really interested in. You want to be like the Japan guy
Yeah.
or Japan girl, but maybe not, right?
Yeah, it also can hurt.
Yeah, for sure.
I see. Well, thank you so much for all these advices. Definitely people will appreciate what you said. Like, and me personally, I learned so much from just like asking all these questions. So thank you for watching this episode. This was Tokyo State of Mind. Let us know what kind of struggles do you have with job hunting and the culture, or if you're a Japanese person, like how do you find this content? Is it something that you're going through as well? Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to this channel. And as always, we're going to bring you amazing guests and their stories on Tokyo State of Mind. So see you.